All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, guys, to state the abundantly obvious, last night was a bit of a mess. We enjoyed spending it with you all, though. At least we could all suffer together collectively. So did not go the way that anyone thought. However, we can tell from the exit polls, from the data that Bernie's team and Pete's team released, from what we saw unfolding at the caucus sites on the ground, it appeared that last night was a very good night for Bernie Sanders and also a good night for Pete Buttigieg. Those are two things that seem fairly clear. Both camps obviously trying to paint this as a win. We will know for sure later today, hopefully, who was the actual winner. I can tell you the Sanders camp feels very strongly about how they did. Pete obviously out there saying he's victorious. We will see whether he is lying or telling the truth. All of that is to be learned, but I think pretty clear they both had a good night. The other thing that is abundantly clear coming out of this is that Biden's campaign is in real trouble. We have been asking ourselves this question for a while. Would the complete lack of energy, enthusiasm, and manifest support for his campaign ultimately lead to his campaign crumbling? Was he outperforming in the polls with respect to what his actual support was on the ground? You just look at the dynamic between these rallies that occurred over the weekend in the same city in Iowa where Bernie Sanders draws 3,000 plus people to a massive rally, tons of energy, tons of excitement, and Joe Biden in the same city on the same day can barely fill a middle school gymnasium. Well, now we have our answer. We know that the person who is supposedly the frontrunner, the person who was the primary rival to Bernie Sanders going into this contest, his campaign is built on sand. He is crumbling. He is out of money. His donors are not going to pony up based on these results, and he is in big, big trouble. I would go so far as to say Joe Biden needs a win, or at the very least to come in a strong second place in New Hampshire, something that I do not believe he will be able to achieve. So even though far from ideal to not actually know the results of the caucus coming out of last night, going into this for Bernie supporters, what was the best case scenario in terms of an order? It was Bernie number 1, Pete number 2, Warren 3, and Biden 4. That's the best possible order that Bernie supporters could have hoped for, and it looks very likely that that is, in fact, what unfolded. Why is it good for Pete to be in second place? Well, as we've covered extensively on this show, he has very little, next to no support with African Americans in particular, but voters of color in general. Simply put, he has no path to the nomination that doesn't require completely magical thinking, which is not going to come together for him. So for him to be the person who comes out of Iowa with the media narrative of momentum is the best possible case for Bernie. In addition, the danger for Sanders has always been that the establishment gets their act together quickly to coalesce behind one anti-Bernie candidate. Well, we know for sure that is not going to happen. None of the candidates, including Amy Klobuchar, is going to get out of the race based on the Iowa results. They are all going to stay in the race. Biden, of course, Bernie Sanders, Warren, Pete, Klobuchar, and Bloomberg and Steyer waiting in the wings down the road. So by splitting that anti-Bernie vote, it puts Bernie in a very good position, which is perhaps why he sounded so upbeat last night in Iowa.
I imagine, have a strong feeling that at some point the results will be announced. And when those results are announced, I have a good feeling we're going to be doing very, very well here in Iowa.
Remember, New Hampshire is next. In New Hampshire, Bernie has a much clearer lead based on his strength with independents than he had in Iowa. Then it's on to Nevada, where he also has a very strong potential of winning, and it's off to the races from there. So putting aside the ultimate mess of not actually knowing the final results and getting the media narrative today about who won and who lost, etc., the actual order that appears to be what we're going to ultimately end up with could not be better for Bernie Sanders. And here's the other thing, Sagar. We covered this yesterday.
Yeah.
The media was never going to give him a win out of this,
Right.
even if he did get the results that showed him in first place. It was always going to be about the number 2 and who was surging and why Iowa doesn't matter because it's the most mostly white state, and it's not as important as you know you were going to get all of that. So I'm not sure that we were really relying on the media narrative for Sanders anyway.
Oh, totally true. I almost feel bad for Pete Buttigieg, because imagine he would have gotten all of that if it was clear. And despite the fact that he may have prematurely declared victory,
on the media narrative,
they created him, right? And he needs them in order to prop him up going into New Hampshire, where, I mean, he's not doing very well right now. We're looking at the Real Clear Politics average in front of us. He's only got 13%. He's in fourth place. And Joe Biden, I can't get this out of my craw, but like, Biden lives to fight another day.
Yeah.
And really does not deserve to, based on what happened last night. Like, he completely crumbled. And that is just, it drives me crazy that we can't show that. And it's something that I've also highlighted here. I think it's really stunning that this is a total failure of the National Democratic Party, that they were not able to drive turnout beyond what was 2016. The fact that preliminary results, who the hell knows we can even trust what's coming out of that.
Yeah.
But that it's 172,000. That's not very good. That's about what on par, not the 300,000 people that we expected for the Iowa caucuses, Krystal.
Yeah, that has got to be a very concerning sign for Democrats who are banking on, look, Trump's people are very energized by impeachment. We've talked to Liz Harrington here, who talked about the massive fundraising surge, all the new donors that they have in, just solely based on the energy around impeachment. That was a big motivating factor for the right. It's looking like it was the opposite of that for the Democrats.
It's like a negative indicator.
Indeed.
So, here we go.
Coming up, Tom Steyer's senior press secretary Benjamin Gertis explains the Steyer surge in South Carolina and shares his reactions to last night. That is next.